It was a gray, overcast morning in the quiet suburb of Auburn Hills, Michigan. The sky hung low, smothering the sun beneath thick clouds, and a gentle drizzle tapped against windows as if the heavens themselves were whispering secrets. On 13th Street, a line of modest family homes stretched along cracked sidewalks, each yard littered with the brown and orange remains of October's final breath. Halloween decorations still clung to porches, now sagging and soaked. It was the kind of place where everyone said good morning, whether they meant it or not. Inside the small blue house on the corner, 32-year-old Elena Marsh stirred a pot of oatmeal on the stove. Her blonde hair, still damp from a rushed shower, clung to her neck. She moved quickly, glancing at the microwave clock. 7:21 a.m. Her daughter Lily should have been up by now. "Lily," she called out, not loudly, but enough to be heard down the hallway. "Come on, honey, you're going to miss the bus." Silence. She gave the oatmeal one last stir, turned off the burner, and wiped her hands on a dish towel before walking to the hallway. The door to Lily's room stood half open. Elena pushed it wider. The bed was empty, the covers still tucked in, undisturbed. The stuffed rabbit Lily never slept without, Mr. Buttons, was still lying on the pillow. Elena frowned, heart beating just a little faster. "Lily?" She checked the bathroom. Empty. The living room, empty. Backyard, nothing. A chill settled over her. She grabbed her phone and dialed. "Lily, if you're hiding, this isn't funny," she said, trying to keep her voice calm. But she wasn't calm, not even close. The police arrived within 30 minutes of her 911 call. Officers in Navy uniforms walked through the home with practiced steps. They asked her all the expected questions. "When did you last see your daughter? Did she have any reason to run away? Is there anyone who might want to take her?" Elena answered everything with trembling hands. "I tucked her in last night around 8:30. She was reading Charlotte's Web. She was fine. Tired, but happy. No one would take her. We don't even talk to her father anymore." By noon, a full search had begun. Neighbors joined officers, combing through yards and nearby wooded areas. A drone buzzed overhead, scanning the nearby creek. A detective was assigned to the case by 3 p.m. Detective Sam Rennick was a man who carried the burden of too many unsolved cases in his eyes. He was in his early 50s, his salt and pepper hair combed neatly, his badge clipped to his belt, and his notepad always in hand. He'd seen his share of missing children. He hoped, as he always did, that this one would end differently. He arrived at the Marsh home just as the sun began to fade. The autumn wind had picked up, and the first responders looked weary and cold. "Elena Marsh," he said gently, his voice gravelly from years of cigarettes and midnight coffees. "Yes," she said, her eyes red and voice hoarse. "I'm Detective Rennick. I need to ask you some things. Details, anything you can remember." They sat at her kitchen table, untouched oatmeal still on the stove behind them. He opened his notebook. "I need to start with a timeline. What was your night like yesterday?" "I picked her up from school at 3. We came home. She watched TV while I made dinner. She had mac and cheese. Around 7:30 we played a board game. Candyland. She got tired. I gave her a bath, read to her, and put her to bed around 8:30. That's the last time I saw her. Any unusual noises during the night?" I was exhausted. I fell asleep around 10. "Doors locked?" "Yes, I always check. Front and back." He wrote everything down carefully. "Has Lily ever left the house alone before?" "Never. She's only 7. Has anyone new come into your life recently? A new friend? A boyfriend?" Elena hesitated. "No. Well, my cousin Amy came to stay with us last month. Just for a while, until she finds her own place. She here now?" "She left for work early. She's a waitress. I'd like to talk to her when she gets back." Rennick stood walking slowly through the house, observing. He paused in Lily's room, kneeling beside the stuffed rabbit. The closet was closed. He opened it, scanning the clothes, the toy chest, a few storage boxes. Everything seemed untouched. He returned to the hallway and paused by the back door. The lock wasn't broken, the frame undamaged, but something caught his eye. A small muddy smudge on the white door frame, no larger than a fingertip. He snapped a photo and turned back to Elena. "Can you think of anything else? Any visitors?" Packages? Deliveries? She shook her head. Number nothing. We'll issue an Amber Alert tonight, he said, his tone shifting to professional urgency. We're checking neighborhood surveillance, doorbell cams, traffic cams. We'll find her, Miss Marsh. But if there's anything you're not telling me, now is the time. I'm not hiding anything, she said, nearly in tears. He believed her. Mostly. That night, news of Lily's disappearance spread across Michigan. Her school photo, brown eyes, strawberry blonde curls, missing front tooth, was everywhere. Social media lit up. Volunteers joined the search. Candlelight vigils were planned. But as the hours passed and the temperature dropped, the urgency in everyone's voices began to harden into dread. Rennick sat in his unmarked car just after midnight, parked across from the Marsh house. Something wasn't right. He'd sensed it in the way Elena flinched when asked about her cousin. He scribbled a note in his pad. Talk to Amy. Dig deeper into the father. Check neighbor statements. Doorframe smudge equals fingerprint test? The wind howled outside, leaves skittering across the pavement like tiny fleeing things. Somewhere, he thought, Lily was out there. Alone. Or worse. He turned the key in the ignition and drove off into the night, already planning the next steps. The case had only just begun, and something told him this one would cut deep. Detective Sam Rennick returned to the Auburn Hills Police Department at 7:12 a.m. Cup of black coffee in one hand, case file under the other. The station bustled with quiet urgency. Officers were reviewing search maps and organizing search parties, while forensics sorted through photos and evidence bags. The missing girl's face was plastered on bulletin boards and TV screens. Her eyes followed you wherever you turned. Rennick closed the door to his office, dropped the file on his desk, and pulled out the notepad from his coat pocket. He reviewed his scribbled list from the night before. 1. Talk to Amy. 2. Father. Whereabouts. 3. Neighbors. Interviews. 4. Forensics. Doorframe. He started with the cousin. Amy Jensen, 28, arrived at the Marsh home around 8:05 a.m. Elna hadn't slept and looked it. Sunken eyes, pale skin, voice low and raw. Rennick waited in the living room with 2 cups of coffee, offering one to Amy when she came in. Amy was slim, tall, with short dyed red hair and a nervous energy she failed to hide. Her hands fidgeted constantly, fingernails picked raw. Thanks, she muttered, taking the coffee and sitting on the couch. Miss Jensen, I'm Detective Rennick. I'd like to ask you some questions about Lily's disappearance. Of course, she said quickly. Anything. What time did you leave yesterday morning? About 6:15 a.m. I had the early shift at the diner. I didn't even see Lily before I left. What time did you return home? She shifted. I didn't. I stayed over at my friend Megan's place. We had drinks after work, watched some movies. I didn't think it'd be a big deal. Did you tell Elena where you were? Number. We don't usually check in with each other. Did you notice anything unusual in the days leading up to Lily's disappearance? She hesitated. There was a guy who came by the house last week. Looked shady. Said he was delivering a package, but Elena told him to leave it on the porch. We didn't order anything. Do you remember what he looked like? White, maybe late 30s. Dirty hoodie, beanie. Didn't make eye contact. Rennick made a note. Could you give me your friend's information to confirm your alibi? Yeah, sure. As she scribbled down Megan's number, Rennick watched her closely. There was no sign of deception in her voice, just fear. That didn't clear her, but it lowered her on the list. By mid-morning, Rennick was across town knocking on the door of Lily's father. James Marsh lived in a small apartment above a laundromat. His records showed he had a DUI 2 years ago and a history of unpaid child support, but nothing violent on his record. Elena had full custody. James had supervised visitation once a month, but he hadn't seen Lily in over 3 months. Court documents showed that he missed 2 consecutive visitations, citing work conflicts. He opened the door groggily, shirtless, a beer can already in hand. Detective Rennick, he said, rubbing his eyes. You hear about Lily? You heard already? News. Elena called me too. Said Lily's missing. You haven't seen your daughter in 3 months, correct? That's right. It wasn't my choice, man. Elena's got it in for me. Where were you between 10 p.m. last night and 7 a.m. this morning? At home. Alone. I was watching football reruns. No one to confirm that? Nope. Rennick scanned the room. Unwashed dishes, pizza boxes, a broken lamp. The place didn't scream child abduction, but he kept his guard up. Did you speak to Lily at all recently? Number Elena won't let me near her. Look, I want to help, okay? But I had nothing to do with this. You ever threaten Elena? His expression hardened. We fought, yeah. She was always judging me, calling me a loser. But I'd never hurt Lily. Rennick believed that, for now. But James wasn't. Entirely off the hook. Back at the station, Rennick found a small manila envelope waiting on his desk. Evidence from the Marsh home. Inside, fingerprint samples from the doorframe. The lab had pulled 3 prints. One belonged to Elena, one to Lily. The third was unknown. He passed the print to forensics to run through the AFIS database. Then came the doorbell footage from a neighbor across the street. The camera faced slightly toward the Marsh home. Between 2:14 a.m. and 2:17 a.m., movement triggered the sensor. Rennick clicked play. A dark figure, hooded, hunched, wearing gloves, emerged from the shadows of the Marsh backyard. The video was grainy, but the figure walked slowly, deliberately. They paused at the back door, glanced around, then slipped inside. 3 minutes later, the figure exited, carrying something small, possibly wrapped in a blanket. Rennick rewound and watched it again and again. He leaned closer, eyes narrowing. This was no amateur, he whispered. By late afternoon, Elena was brought in for another round of questions. Rennick kept his tone gentle but firm. Is there anyone at all, you can think of who may have wanted to hurt you by hurting Lily? No, she said through tears. Everyone loved her. She was so sweet. I can't imagine. He laid out photos. One of the muddy fingerprint, another of the doorbell footage frame. Her hand trembled. I don't know who that is. Then you have to trust me. Whoever this was knew the layout of your home. They got in and out quietly. No signs of forced entry. That means either they had a key or they were very familiar with you. Maybe both. Elena broke down crying. I just want my baby back. That night, Rennick couldn't sleep. He stared at the whiteboard in the incident room, where every detail of the case was pinned. Timeline, footage, fingerprint, suspects, alibis. But something gnawed at him, an overlooked detail. The package Amy mentioned. The man in the hoodie. He wrote a name in large block letters, unidentified male, then circled it 3 times. Somewhere this man was watching, waiting. And Lily's time was running out. The sun didn't rise so much as it pushed through the grayness the next morning, casting a pale light over Auburn Hills. The search for Lily Marsh entered its 3rd day. Community volunteers formed tighter grids, sweeping through the nearby woods and abandoned properties. Drone units expanded their coverage radius. The media posted hourly updates. Yet still, no sign of the little girl. Detective Sam Rennick sat behind his desk, motionless, eyes locked on the paused video still on his laptop. The hooded figure, half obscured in shadow, clutching someone to their chest. It was 2:17 a.m. Sunday morning. Whoever they were, they hadn't stumbled into the house. They went straight for the back door. He turned away from the screen, stood up, and pulled a fresh case folder from his drawer. This one had a red tab, archived, cold cases. A hunch had started crawling around the back of his brain, something that scratched at him every time he looked at that shadowy figure. 9th March 2017. Different neighborhood, different year, but eerily familiar details. No forced entry, mother home at the time, child taken between 2 and 3 a.m., never found. Same pattern. He scribbled a note to request a full case comparison and reached for his phone. His first call was to the forensics lab. Anything on that 3rd fingerprint yet? A tired-sounding tech replied, no hits in AFIS, not in any criminal database. Not even juvenile. Nope. It's either someone squeaky clean or someone who's never been fingerprinted. Print quality? Clean enough. No smudges. Full thumb. Rennick cursed under his breath. Keep it flagged. High priority. By 10 a.m., he was back at the Marsh house. Elena sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by half-drunk cups of coffee and search maps. Her eyes were hollow. I remembered something, she said before he even sat down, about that package Amy told you about. I saw the guy too. When? Last Friday. I didn't want to mention it before because I didn't think it mattered. He knocked once, then left it on the porch. But he didn't walk away right after. I saw him through the peephole. He just stood there for a while like he was listening. Rennick's pulse quickened. What time was this? Just after noon? Maybe 12:30? What was in the package? I thought it was a book I'd ordered, but when I opened it, it was empty. Just an empty box. You didn't report that? Number, I thought it was a prank. He jotted it all down. Then, can I see the box? I threw it out. Garbage still here? She shook her head. Pickup was Monday. Rennick frowned. What about security cameras? You said you don't have one, but maybe a neighbor caught something? She hesitated. Our neighbor to the left, Mr. Keating, he's got a ring cam, but he's out. Of town, Florida. He won't be back till next week. Get me his contact information. I'll request access. 2 hours later, Rennick stood in the cluttered, dusty back room of a small shipping center downtown. He was following a lead on the package delivery. It had a fake return label, but the shipping center's manager had good record-keeping habits and reviewed the footage. There on screen was the man, hoodie, sunglasses, unshaven face. Not enough to ID, but enough to confirm he personally dropped off the empty box using cash. He say anything? Rennick asked. Just that he needed a rush delivery. Gave the Marsh address, paid cash, didn't stick around. It wasn't much, but it was enough. This wasn't random. This was premeditated. Back at the precinct, his phone buzzed with a new voicemail. It was from a search team volunteer, a 16-year-old named Trent Rivers, voice shaky. Detective Rennick? I think you should come to this old barn near Sand Creek. About 5 miles from the Marsh home, we found something. The location was remote. Woods choked the roads on either side, and the barn itself looked like it had been dead for 20 years. Boards dangled off rusted nails, and vines had crept up its sides like green veins. Inside, the air was heavy with mold and rot. Here, Trent pointed, flashlight beam trembling. In the far corner, partially covered by a tarp, lay a child's blanket. It was pale pink, embroidered with tiny stars. Elena had described it as Lily's favorite. Rennick crouched. Don't touch anything, he said gently. He scanned the area. No sign of Lily. No blood. But something about the space told him it had been recently occupied. A few snack wrappers, a plastic water bottle. The bottle still had condensation. He turned to the young volunteer. You did good, Trent. Real good. Forensics would be here within minutes. As Rennick stepped outside to make the call, his phone buzzed again. Unknown number. He answered. There was only breathing on the other end. Hello? Nothing. Then a low, rasping voice. She cries when it gets cold. Click. The line went dead. Rennick stood frozen, knuckles white around his phone. This was no longer a search. This was a countdown. The recording echoed in the incident room like a ghost no one could silence. She cries when it gets cold. Detective Sam Rennick played it for the third time that morning. The voice was low, hoarse, male, but distorted enough to evade a clean vocal match. He stared at the waveform on the screen, analyzing every pause, every breath, every background noise. Can you isolate the background? He asked the tech team. A young analyst, Ellie Monroe, leaned forward, adjusting her headphones. There's wind, maybe from an open window. Faint metal clinking, possibly chains or tools. And, wait. She tapped a few keys. A new sound filtered through, faint but unmistakable. A dog barking. Definitely a dog. Small, high-pitched bark. Maybe a terrier. Could help narrow the location, Rennick muttered. There weren't any dogs near that barn we found. No, Ellie agreed. This was somewhere else. Rennick stood. Pull all registered animal complaints, barking calls, or dog pound logs from the last 48 hours, 5-mile radius from the barn in Marsh's home. You think he's moving her around? Ellie asked. I think he's watching. Back at the Marsh house, Rennick returned to speak with Elena, this time about Lily's habits. Comfort objects, phrases, routines. Anything that might clue them in to how she'd react in captivity. She's terrified of the dark, Elena whispered, clutching Mr. Buttons, the stuffed rabbit. She sleeps with her lamp on every night. Would she scream? Try to run? Number. She freezes, like she just shuts down. That detail hit Rennick harder than he expected. Children who froze under stress were harder to find. They didn't make noise. They didn't fight. They vanished into silence. Before leaving, he asked Elena one more thing. Have you remembered anyone else unusual? A neighbor? Someone from the school? A stranger who seemed too interested in Lily? She hesitated. There's this guy, Tom Reeds. He works maintenance at Lily's school. Real quiet. A little off. He gave her a lollipop once, but she said he creeped her out. Did you report that? I told the school. They said he was background checked. That was enough for Rennick. He pulled up Tom Reed's employment file at the local school district office. Mid-40s, lived alone, no priors. But a strange note stood out. He had a minor misconduct report from 2 years ago for being caught in a staff break room late at night with no scheduled work. He visited Reed's residence, a small house with a chain-link fence and a cracked mailbox. A dog barked from behind the house, shrill and persistent. Rennick's spine straightened. Terrier, he knocked. No answer. Reeds, he called. This is Detective Rennick. I need to speak with you. No movement inside. He circled the property, noting a basement window covered in cardboard. The dog, white, wiry, agitated, barked through the back gate. A neighbor poked her head out across the alley. Tom ain't home, she said. Left yesterday morning. Ain't seen him since. You know where he went? Nope, but I saw him carrying a big duffel bag. Seemed in a hurry. Rennick filed for a warrant by noon. While waiting, he had officers canvass Reed's known hangouts, dollar stores, bus stations, diners. Then he returned to the station to check the results from the barn forensics. No fingerprints, no DNA. But the blanket had a faded partial boot print on it. Heel heavy, thick tread. Not enough for a match, but distinct enough for comparison. He jotted a note. Get Reed's work boots. By evening, the warrant came through. Rennick and 2 officers entered Reed's home. The interior was sparse. Bare furniture, dusty surfaces, a few dirty dishes in the sink. But in the bedroom, something stopped Rennick cold. A wall of photographs, dozens of them, all children, playgrounds, schoolyards. Most were distant shots, candid, unaware. But near the center were 4 larger ones, each a close-up, each of Lily Marsh. One showed her on a swing, her blonde hair flying. Another had her walking with Elena down a sidewalk. The most recent showed her sitting in her front yard, drawing with sidewalk chalk. Rennick stepped back, stomach tightening. He checked the small desk nearby. Inside the top drawer was a burner phone. Recent calls, only one outgoing, to Rennick's number. She cries when it gets cold. Rennick stared at the wall, fists clenched. We've got our guy, he said quietly, but Lily still wasn't here. Just after midnight, a patrol officer spotted Reed's vehicle, an old tan pickup truck, abandoned outside a storage facility 10 miles out of town. Rennick was on scene in 15 minutes. The manager, half asleep and barefoot, showed them the records. Unit C4, he said, squinting. Rented 2 days ago. Paid cash. Rennick unlocked the roll-up door and pulled it open slowly. Gun drawn, breath tight. The scent hit first. Stale air, mildew, and something faintly chemical. A blanket was spread on the floor. A juice box, a flashlight. But no Lily. She had been there. But now she was gone. He found a small piece of paper taped to the wall. Childlike handwriting, unsteady. My name is Lily. I'm scared. Rennick's heart pounded. She'd been alive. She'd left a message. And Reed's was still one step ahead. As dawn broke, casting gold against the metal doors of the storage facility, Rennick made a vow under his breath. You're not going to hurt her. Not on my watch. But deep down, he knew time was bleeding out. And monsters like Reed's didn't keep their secrets forever. They buried them. The walls of the Auburn Hills precinct buzzed with controlled chaos as Detective Sam Rennick pinned new evidence to the central case board. The photos of Tom Reed's house, the child's scrawled message from the storage unit, the burner phone log, each detail screamed urgency. Yet there was still no sign of Lily Marsh, and Reed's had vanished. Put him on every state BOLO list, Rennick barked at the admin team. Send his face to bus stations, train depots, airports, every backwater motel within 100 miles. He paused, hand frozen over the map. He's not running. He's relocating. He's playing a game. Ellie Monroe added quietly beside him. Rennick nodded. And he's setting the rules. By mid-morning, new intel came in. Reed's cell pinged briefly on a tower near Lapeer Forest Reserve, a dense stretch of woods just north of town, with cabins, hiking trails, and plenty of places to disappear. We've got a narrow window, Rennick told the field teams. He was there just hours ago. 4 search teams deployed. Drones took to the sky again. Bloodhounds from a state K-9 unit arrived by noon, tracking the scent from the storage unit to a nearby bus station, where security footage showed Reed's boarding a rural shuttle northbound at 4 a.m. He was moving fast. Too fast. Rennick stopped by the Marsh home again. Elena was curled on the couch, clutching Mr. Buttons, the stuffed rabbit now frayed at the ears. She left a note, Rennick said softly, crouching by her side. We found it in the storage unit. She wrote her name, said she was scared. Elena's tears came instantly. She's alive? She was, and we're close. I promise you, Elena, we're not stopping. She grabbed his arm. Find her, Sam, please, I will. But the weight of that promise pressed into his ribs like iron. Back at headquarters, Rennick made a decision. No more waiting, no more reacting. He had to get into Reed's head. He pulled everything. School employment records, social media traces, psychiatric evaluations, juvenile files sealed by court. Order. Slowly, a pattern formed. Reed's had been in foster care from ages 6 to 17. Multiple homes, abuse allegations, isolation. But one report stood out, filed when he was 9. Caseworker's note. Tom exhibits an obsessive fixation on a younger foster sibling, displays signs of delusional protection, believes he is the child's guardian angel against imagined threats. That phrase hit Rennick like a punch to the chest. Guardian angel. He pulled up Reed's internet search history from the burner phone. Among random searches was one bookmarked article. Angels who rescue the lost. Biblical parables of protection. He thinks he's saving her, Rennick muttered. That afternoon, they found the break they needed. A hunter walking through the southern edge of Lapeer Reserve reported a man matching Reed's description near a rundown ranger station, long abandoned. The hunter didn't approach, but thought it was odd that someone would be camping so close to the structure. Field teams converged within the hour. Rennick joined them personally. The forest was damp from recent rain. Every branch dripped. Every step squished under fallen leaves. The old ranger station came into view. 2 stories, boarded windows, peeling paint, half swallowed by ivy. Guns drawn, they approached the front. Inside, darkness, dust, the smell of rotting wood. And then, a faint whimper. Rennick rushed toward the sound, heart hammering. He found her in a back room, huddled in a corner, wrapped in a grimy sleeping bag. Her cheeks were streaked with dirt, eyes wide and terrified, but she was breathing. Lily, he said gently, kneeling. My name is Sam. You're safe now. She didn't move, not at first. Then she whispered. He said he'd come back, that you'd try to take me. Rennick held out his hand. No one's taking you. We're going home. Behind him, officers cleared the rest of the building. No sign of Reed's. Where is he? Rennick asked gently. Lily pointed toward the ceiling. He sleeps up there sometimes. But he left. Said I wasn't ready yet. Rennick's stomach turned. Ready for what? I don't know, she whispered. But he said if I stayed quiet, he'd keep me safe from the shadows. They searched the attic. Empty. Just a sleeping mat, some crackers, and a torn Bible with the words, "Protect the innocent," underlined again and again. Reed's was gone. But Lily was alive. Back at the hospital, Elena rushed into the room and wrapped her arms around her daughter. The reunion was tearful, raw, almost too fragile to watch. Rennick stood back, giving them space. But his mind didn't rest. Reeds had left her behind. Why? He opened his phone. A new voicemail. It was Reed's. You saved her from the wrong world, detective. Not the real one. She'll remember me when the shadows come back. They always do. Click. Rennick stared out the hospital window as police searched for Reeds across 5 counties. The monster was still loose, and he had plans. The phone call came just as Rennick was about to leave the hospital, his mind still haunted by the cryptic voicemail from Tom Reeds. He had no time to rest, no time for comfort. He needed answers. Detective Rennick, the officer on the other end, said urgently. We found something. At Reeds's last known address. You need to get over here. Rennick didn't ask questions. He didn't need to. He hung up and was out the door in seconds, racing through the streets of Auburn Hills, the weight of the case heavy in his gut. By the time he arrived at Reed's house, the area was swarming with officers, crime scene tape fluttering in the breeze. Yellow evidence markers dotted the ground like breadcrumbs, leading toward the back of the property. What do you have? Rennick asked, stepping out of the car. Found something in the basement, the lead investigator, Officer Harris, said. We're pretty sure it's important. Rennick followed Harris down into the basement, where the faint smell of mildew lingered in the damp air. The walls were cracked, and the floor was littered with broken furniture and old boxes. At first glance, it looked like a typical storage space, disorganized, messy. But then they came across a small makeshift area in the corner, a child's bed. There was no mistaking it. The bed was small, simple, with a thin, worn mattress. Beside it, a few small toys, dolls, action figures, scattered on the floor. Rennick's eyes narrowed as he crouched down, scanning the space. There were no sheets on the bed, only a pale, tattered blanket, similar to the one found in the barn. The walls around the bed were lined with newspapers, old magazines, and scribbled notes. Rennick moved closer and began to read the notes aloud under his breath. His pulse quickened. She's almost ready. The world will see her soon. I will protect her. I am her guardian. The shadows will never touch her again. Jesus Christ, Rennick muttered, stepping back. He could feel the weight of those words pressing against him, the bile rising in his throat. Reeds wasn't just obsessed with Lily. He believed he was protecting her from something. But what? He turned to Harris. Did anyone check the attic here? Harris nodded. Yes, we went up there. Nothing unusual, just more old stuff. No, Rennick said, his mind racing. Get back up there. Check every inch of that attic. I have a feeling we missed something. The attic turned out to be as barren as it appeared at first. But as Harris moved boxes around, he found something odd. Hidden behind a stack of old trunks was a small wooden chest. It looked out of place, old and worn, but not from the same era as the rest of the junk in the attic. Rennick knelt beside it, his instincts telling him it was important. He lifted the lid slowly, feeling the weight of the moment, as if something heavy was about to be revealed. Inside the chest, there were photographs, hundreds of them. All of them were of children, including many that Rennick had already seen at Reed's house. Playground shots, group photos at school, candid moments. But as his eyes scanned them, something chilled him. One photo at the very top was different. It was a picture of Lily, but this photo was taken not at school, not at the park, but in the middle of a dark forest. Far from the city, far from her home. She was wearing the same pink jacket she had been wearing when she went missing. The other disturbing detail was the man standing behind her, just barely visible in the corner of the frame. His face was obscured, but his posture, his presence, was unmistakable. It was Reed's. He was there. The photo was taken the night Lily had been abducted. Son of a bitch, Rennick breathed, slamming the chest shut. His mind raced through the implications. Reeds had been planning this for far longer than anyone realized. He didn't just want Lily. He needed her. He believed he was saving her from something, and it was only a matter of time before that delusion spiraled even further out of control. Rennick returned to the station and threw himself into the investigation with renewed intensity. He couldn't afford to lose focus. Not now. Reed's was out there, and Lily wasn't safe yet. He needed to understand what drove this man to such lengths, to such madness. He pored over Reed's old foster care files, his psychiatric evaluations, his criminal history. What had been missed? What could have tipped them off earlier? It was in one of these reports that he found a startling connection, a link between Reed's and a series of missing persons cases from a few years ago. It wasn't just Lily who was the target. Reed's had been involved, directly or indirectly, in at least 4 other disappearances over the past decade. 2 children from a nearby town, 1 girl from a neighboring state, and 1 case that had been classified as a runaway, but no one had ever truly believed that. Every missing child had been a girl. Every single one had been the same age as Lily. Rennick slammed the folder closed. It was like a puzzle piece finally falling into place. Reed's wasn't just fixated on Lily. He was after something more, something he had been chasing for years, and now that he had her, he wasn't going to let go. The following days passed in a blur of late-night meetings, phone calls, and dead-end leads. Every time Rennick thought he was close, Reed slipped further away. The tips came in, calls from people who had spotted him, reports of possible sightings, but they all led to nothing. Lily remained safe, but the pressure was suffocating. It was only a matter of time before Reed's resurfaced, and Rennick knew it. He had to be ready. But deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that Reed's was leading him somewhere. The question was, where? Then 3 days after Lily was found, a breakthrough came. A single call. The voice on the other end was calm, almost detached, but Rennick recognized it instantly. "I'm coming for her, detective," Reed said. "And when I do, she'll finally understand why I kept her safe. The shadows are waiting." Click. Rennick's blood ran cold. Reed's was coming. And this time, it wasn't just a game. It was a race against time. The air in Auburn Hills had a strange stillness to it as dawn crept over the city. Detective Sam Rennick hadn't slept in nearly 72 hours. His eyes were bloodshot, his mind foggy, but one thing was crystal clear. Tom Reed's was coming for Lily again. The phone call had been brief, chilling, and filled with a threat that left no room for misunderstanding. Reed's wasn't running anymore. He wasn't hiding. He was planning something, and Lily was at the center of it all. Rennick paced in the briefing room, running his fingers through his hair. The precinct was quiet for once, almost eerily so. Everyone was waiting, expecting a breakthrough, but nothing was coming. No further sightings of Reed's, no trace of him on the streets or in the woods. It was as though he had vanished entirely, but Rennick knew better. He'd spent too many years hunting predators like Reed's to believe that someone could simply disappear. He was out there, watching, waiting, and he was coming for Lily. It was just after 6 a.m. when Rennick got the call. His phone buzzed as he sat in the cramped car outside the Marsh house, watching Elena cradle her daughter in the front yard, her face drawn and pale. It was hard to watch her. The fear in her eyes was a reflection of his own. "Detective Rennick," came the voice on the other end of the line. "We've got a lead. You need to get to Lapeer Creek. It's bad." Rennick's heart sank. Lapeer Creek, the place he'd heard Reed speak about during the investigation. It was an isolated stretch of land, dense with trees, and it had once been a popular hangout for local teenagers. But lately it had become nothing more than an abandoned clearing, forgotten by most. "I'm on my way," Rennick said, his voice tight with tension. When he arrived at Lapeer Creek, the sky had turned a dull gray, the first signs of morning slipping through the heavy clouds. The air felt damp, almost oppressive, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The officers already on scene led him toward a small, secluded clearing nestled between thick pines. And then, Rennick saw it. A crudely made structure, some sort of shack, hidden behind a cluster of trees. The door was slightly ajar, a thick, suffocating silence surrounding it. Rennick moved forward, his senses on high alert. His hand instinctively went to the gun at his side as he scanned the area, his breath shallow. One officer stepped up beside him. "We found something, sir. It doesn't look good." Rennick nodded, motioning for the officer to lead the way. As they approached the shack, he could see the outlines of old furniture, torn blankets, and discarded items scattered across the dirt floor. It was clear no one had lived here in years, until now. Then just beyond the doorframe, he saw her. Lily. She was huddled in the corner, shaking uncontrollably. Her face was streaked with dirt and tears, her hands clasped tightly around Mr. Buttons, the stuffed rabbit she'd refused to let go of. Her eyes were wide, filled with terror, but there was something else, something more than fear. It was exhaustion. She had been through too much, far too much for someone so young. Rennick knelt before her slowly, speaking in a soft voice. "Lily, it's me. Sam. You're safe now. You're going to be okay." Lily didn't move. She didn't respond. Her gaze remained fixed on the dirt, her small body trembling, as though it was trying to vanish into the earth. He reached out, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "Lily, look at me." At first she didn't, but then, as though something inside her broke, she finally lifted her head, her tear-filled eyes meeting his. "He said he would come back," she whispered, barely audible. "He said you were the monster." Rennick's heart clenched. "I'm not a monster. I'm here to take you home." Before he could say anything more, there was a loud rustling noise behind them. Rennick spun around, his pulse spiking. And there he was, Tom Reeds, standing in the doorway of the shack, his eyes wild, his face pale and drawn. He looked unhinged, his hair matted, his clothes torn as if he had been living off the land for days. His hands were empty, but there was a knife strapped to his belt, an unsettling reminder of just how dangerous he was. "You don't understand," Reed said, his voice strained and almost pleading. "She belongs with me. I'm the only one who can protect her. You don't know what's coming. The shadows, they'll take her if I don't keep her safe." Rennick took a step forward, his own voice firm. "Reeds, this is over. You're not protecting her, you're hurting her, and I'm not going to let you take her anywhere else." Reeds's eyes flickered with something akin to rage. He raised his hand as though to strike, but then hesitated. "She doesn't belong to you. She's mine. I kept her safe from the beginning. Don't you see? She's mine." The desperation in his voice was unmistakable, but there was a madness there too, a hollow conviction that couldn't be reasoned with. Rennick's mind raced. Every second was critical. He couldn't wait for backup. He couldn't afford a standoff. "I don't want to hurt you," Rennick said slowly, his voice calm but resolute. "But if you don't put the knife down, I'm going to have to stop you." For a brief moment, Reed seemed to snap out of his delusion, his eyes blinking as though he were coming to his senses. But then, in an instant, his expression darkened again, and with a wild scream, he lunged forward. It happened so quickly, Rennick didn't have time to think. He drew his gun, fired twice, once, twice. The first shot missed, but the second one struck Reeds in the shoulder, knocking him back. Reed staggered, his breath ragged, his grip loosening on the knife. He collapsed to the ground with a grunt, blood seeping from the wound. Rennick moved in immediately, kneeling beside him. "It's over, Tom. You're done." Reeds gasped, his breath shallow. His eyes locked with Rennick's, and for a moment it seemed like he was finally seeing reality. "I didn't mean to hurt her," Reeds whispered, the last remnants of his delusion slipping away. "I just wanted to save her." "You didn't save anyone," Rennick said softly. "You nearly destroyed everything." Reed's eyes fluttered shut, and in the silence that followed, Rennick called for an ambulance. He didn't know if Reeds would survive his wounds, but at that moment, it didn't matter. What mattered was Lily. She was safe. For now. The ambulance arrived minutes later, and Lily was taken to the hospital for a thorough examination. Rennick stood outside the emergency room, watching as the doctors worked to treat her. Elena arrived shortly after, her eyes red and swollen, but her relief was palpable. She clutched Lily's rabbit tightly as she walked into the hospital, her steps slow but steady. Rennick stood back, watching mother and daughter reunite in the sterile hospital hallway. The nightmare was finally over. But as he stood there, a thought crossed his mind, a dark, lingering question. What would happen when Reeds woke up? Because while the shadows were gone for now, some monsters never truly disappeared.